Hi, good evening, Shyamlal. It's great to see you. And just a brief introduction I'm going to give about you. I think there is a lot you've accomplished. So just a small little brief introduction. Shayamal Vallabhjee was born in Durban, South Africa. He's a sports scientist with a master's in psychology. He has spent the past 2 decades working with the Olympians, professional sports team, corporate executive, patients, and children. Having lived as a monk in Hare Krishna temple, he now draws his learning from ancient spiritual practices in combination with evidence-based science to help motivate and inspire people. Thank you so much for joining us today at the ABC Ahmedabad Book Club. We are really very fortunate to have you. And I think there's a lot of learning today that's going to be happening. And I have read the book. I think it's there are so many things that are my takeaways from that. And I haven't even gone through the process of, writing a lot. So I'm looking forward to reread the whole book again. Thank you so much for writing that book. I think it's going to change a lot of life for people who are definitely going to go through that process.
Thank you very much for welcoming me to the live with Ahmedabad Book Club. It's an honor. And thank you for reading the book. It was written from a few lenses, so I'm really hoping it does have some deep impact in people's lives. And I'm thoroughly looking forward to the next hour.
So there are these few questions which I have noted down, which from the book, which I wanted to ask you personally myself. So one is the first chapter. You start with self-love. And I think self-love today is one of the biggest mantras which is going around. Everyone is saying, self-love. And you also talk about safe method in your chapter. So can you elaborate on that a little bit? And also another thing is you mentioned virtues in that chapter. So virtues as well as self-love. How do they both correlate?
Well, self-love, you're right, is probably one of the most spoken about subjects there is. It's also one of the most misunderstood subjects. When someone tells you to fall in love with yourself or love yourself more, what exactly are they meaning? And what exactly are you supposed to fall in love with? And I think that vagueness around there has led so many people to misconstrue what it is, to get lost in the process of what it is. And, and that was the same question I set to answer in this chapter, was that when someone says fall in love with yourself, what exactly do you fall in love with? It's not about spoiling yourself. It's not about setting your boundaries. It's got nothing to do with expressing who you are. It's about knowing who you are. And that philosophy goes back to about 324 BC. Based on philosophy from Greeks and Romans and old philosophers, which I bring in the book. And the process is really of understanding what your value system is. That's what actually you fall in love with. Your value system allows you to then set safe emotional boundaries. Your value system allows you to communicate and express how you feel. So if you ask someone to fall in love, or through the process of falling in love with themselves, you ask them to set your emotional boundaries. But if they don't know themselves well enough, those boundaries become very fickle. They become a very unstable foundation upon which to cultivate a relationship with yourself. I also deep dive into showing how, for you to truly love yourself, you need to love every experience that has made you who you are, irrespective of how traumatic that experience was. Even a trauma like abuse, for example, as terrible as that experience was, that experience molded in you a realization or a value system that drives you to ensure no one else feels that same way. Like for me, for example, I grew up in South Africa during the apartheid, which was deep discrimination. Okay, now it was the pain of discrimination that has forged in me the drive, motivation, and passion to make sure no one else is discriminated. Now, if I love that value system of mine, if I love the fact that I stand for that, I can't hate what brought that to the forefront of me. And this is very often misconstrued. So when I'm telling someone, you got to love the experiences, then someone says, how do you expect me to love the fact that I was sexually abused? I said, I'm not asking you to love the fact that you're sexually abused. I'm not saying look forward to that. I'm saying that realize that that experience, as bad as it was, played a vital part in you becoming who you are today. And if you have any hope of loving yourself today, you need to appreciate the role that that played in you becoming who you are. So that's the fine line between understanding and falling in love with yourself. And that's really where the SAFE method comes in. The SAFE method was a method that I really coined, which helps someone deal with emotional pain. The first is, the S is for self-examination of the trauma, of the pain itself. A is to really accept and acknowledge what that is. Accept and acknowledge your state of emotion currently, or what's linked to that, or where you are. F is forgiveness. Forgiveness is really the transition of energy. That's what it's meaning. It's you're now welcoming energy to move from one state to another. And E is to really energize and elevate. One is to heal, but to really operate optimally in a society, you need to raise your energy. If you don't raise your energy, you really never truly move forward from that pain. So moving forward is a part of really raising that energy. And I break down various steps that someone can do to do that.
So my next question actually is about this Japanese, Masaru Emoto. He claimed that the molecular water structure changes with positive words and thoughts. And there is also a mention of vibrational energy in our food in your books. So what is the optimal diet for a person like me who's non-athletic? And what are the higher food groups which have higher vibrational energies?
So I don't give diets because for one reason, I know nothing about the person. If I would never prescribe a diet to someone I know nothing about. Okay. Because for me, I'm a scientist. Everything is layered at the back end of tests. For me to simply prescribe a food, I would study at least 250 different variables. I need to know the gut microbiome that your body has, that it can break down that food. I need to know your metal intolerances, your food intolerances, your allergies. I need to know your genetic potential. I need to understand all of this before I prescribe a food. So I don't prescribe foods until I'm working with someone very in-depth in there. But when you speak of, you're right, certain food types have higher vibrational energy than others. For example, whole organic plant-based foods have the highest form of vibrational energy, and then you just start dropping from there. So for example, organic clean meats have a lower vibrational energy than those plant-based foods. Then normal meat, for example, bought somewhere else, has got a lower vibrational energy. Then junk and processed food or refined sugars has the lowest form of vibrational energy. Right. Now, if you understand and accept that you are energy, and it's through that energy that you are interconnected in this cosmos or in this planetary system, right? Then you're a byproduct of the energy that you consume. The energy you consume can either drop or raise your vibrational energy. In psychology, we keep saying something really beautiful. We say that collective intelligence is always lower than individual intelligence, right? And that's what it means. It's that, when you put a group of 100 people together, the average of everyone's intelligence will be lower than individualized intelligence, because that's what grouping does in some shape and form, right? So the same thing, if you're putting lower vibrational foods into your body, you are dropping your vibrational energy. If you're consuming higher vibrational foods, you're giving yourself a chance to raise your vibrational energy. And you are a byproduct of the vibrations you put out in the universe. You understand? So if you're thinking positively, if you're eating clean, you're chanting, you're practicing your breath work, you're eating whole-based foods, you're grounding your energy, you're doing all of these things, then you're operating at a higher vibrational energy, which means that you'll resonate a higher vibrational energy. You'll attract things in accordance with that vibrational energy. And this is very, very fundamentally important to understand.
Thank you so much. And another thing I wanted to ask you is how to increase your mental strength. So what are the hacks in life that we can do to increase your mental strength?
Well, mental strength and even fitness, for example, is not something that can be hacked. Hack, by the mere fact that we use the word hack, means we want a quick, short outcome to it. There is no quick, short outcome to it. Even putting on weight is not quick and short. You consistently, any individual consistently ate rubbish, or they consistently didn't train, and that's why their body is where they is. and it's going to require that level of consistency to get you back to where you are. So mental strength is really cultivated on a day-to-day basis by sticking to a particular routine or sticking to a particular practice that is in alignment with your goals or you becoming who you want to. That's fundamentally important. You have to understand, A, what are the daily actionables that are going to contribute towards me achieving my goal. Mental strength is doing that irrespective of what that circumstances are. Not taking a single day break, not taking a single, sticking to that regime, doing it at the same time, the same process. That's what really mental strength is to be able to keep those distractions aside and focus on the task at hand. And that's not a hack. That's a byproduct of time. Because neurobiology tells us that the brain needs wiring and it takes time to wire the brain. A hack means it would happen simply. And if it happened quickly, then that piece of information is counterintuitive to how your neurobiology works. So for anyone wanting to bring any change into their life, the first thing they need to cultivate is a commitment to the practice and consistency to that practice. And that's the only way you'll change your psychology and your neurobiology.
Thank you again so much. I think that's very profound. I did read somewhere in your book, you said that you liked a piece of chocolate, and that one person you met, a guru who told you that you must resist that, right? And that's an everyday practice.
That's an everyday practice, correct? Yes.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. So another thing I wanted to ask you was that, what is the best piece of advice you have got?
The best piece of advice that I have got is probably it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission. So what it pretty much means is tells people to stop waiting for someone to give you permission to live your life according to how you want to. Go about doing it. And if you upset people, just be humble enough to say, I'm sorry, and move ahead. But you'll achieve far more if you prepare to ask for forgiveness as opposed to wait for permission.
That's amazing. Thank you. Again, I think every time I'm just going to say thank you because, I am learning so much listening to you. Another thing is that, your journey from being a sports scientist and then, going and living in a monk in an ashram. And then after that, you were a motivational speaker and now an author. So it's been a very inspirational journey. So could you tell us a little bit about this inspiring journey? What led to it and how did you go about the entire stages of it?
Well, nothing was really planned. Everything was happened very organically in some shape and form. I wanted to be a professional cricketer in South Africa, but I grew up in an apartheid era. And for those watching who don't know what the apartheid was, it was institutionalized segregation of people of color. So it was really racial discrimination that was systemic, right down to the way the rules and regulations around government even did it. The difference with the apartheid and what's happening perhaps in America right now is that you wouldn't find a law that segregates a person of color. It's just now culturally ingrained in certain populations around the world where you find people of color are discriminated against. The thing with the apartheid is that it was systemic and it was regulated through laws. Okay, and that's what systemic racism really is. So I grew up in an environment where opportunities for people of color were really restricted. And little did I know that I was entering a field, which is sport, that was probably the most impacted by racism. There were really no opportunities for people of color in any shape or form to represent their country. And when I turned 18, I really hit a roadblock because I realized how bad these were. And remember, in getting to that point, I had a lot of conflict with my parents because my parents didn't want me to walk down that direction because they were very clear about the challenges that I was going to face. So when I hit that roadblock, I really couldn't turn to them because I've been fighting with them for the last few years in really leading and walking my own path. And I'd reached a stage where the pain of that discrimination, the pain of realizing that no matter how hard you work, you're never going to get a dream. No matter, nothing's really in your hands. You are at the mercy of your environment, your ecosystem, whoever feels sorry for you. And people will constantly just throw pigeons at you in any shape and form. And that was really disheartening. And the only place I realized I could help myself was really moving into the ashram, because I was starting to cultivate really toxic thoughts. I was not wishing people well. I was getting very upset and angry all the time. And so I started spending some time in the temple, and it happened so organically that I literally drove to work one day in the morning at 5 o'clock, and in the afternoon I drove to the temple and just never went back home for a couple of years. So it was not a planned thing where I planned and moved in. I lived there the first couple months. I was just borrowing clothes from each other. I was still working, so it was still very inorganic. Slowly, I tapered off my work, started spending more time in the temple. But that journey was very incrementally important, because up until that point, you see, I blend a few worlds together. And people often ask me, how do these three worlds come together? Spirituality and sports science and psychology. I said it came together very naturally. One was that, when I was studying the human body, I realized that no matter how fit a person is, it's not a guarantee for success. And that simply opened another door. Well, if you can be supremely fit and that cannot guarantee success, there must be other elements out there that can. So that's what pushed me into psychology. And I realized that modern psychology is really a behavioral science and really working on diagnosis. We're really treatment-based, really looking at the problem. Okay. And as I peeled away the layers, there were so many terms in there, and it really never explained the root of the problem. It explained what the problem is, but it didn't explain the root of that problem, and that was where spirituality really answered the questions. Spirituality peels away the layers of knowing who you are. And I explain to people there's a beautiful mergence between spirituality and science. You see, being aware of a thought in your mind is spirituality. It's mindfulness. Mindfulness is stilling the mind to be able to hold yourself in a single thought, emotion, feeling. That is mindfulness. Mindfulness is spirituality. But understanding the origin of that thought is a science. Okay, so because I'm aware of what is in my head doesn't make me aware of how it came there. Science will explain how it came there. Spirituality will explain what is there. So whilst the one stills the mind, the other allows you to peel away the layers of the mind to go deeper and deeper. And this is the beautiful mergence of these two sciences as such. And the sports science really is the science of the human body. And the human body is really the vehicle. It's your vehicle to achieve every single thing you want. When as fit as this vehicle is, the more you can go out there and achieve. If it's unhealthy, you really shorten your the duration with which you can achieve something, and you put a phenomenal amount of pressure on yourself. That's it, and that's what happens. When people, that's why you find a lot of people are anxious. A lot of people's relationships are falling by the wayside. Why? Because everyone's got this ideology that I should be a millionaire by 30. Someone graduates at 24 and they want to be a millionaire by 30. Everyone comes with this pseudo realization that I can retire at 40. It's very, very difficult. There are few people who can do it, and those people are more byproducts of external variables than really their own hard work. They were in the right place in the right time, and the right person believed them, and the right opportunity presented them. And what those people fail to realize is that it was probably 10% of their effort and 90% of their ecosystem that allowed them to be in that fortunate position. But that position is not a representation of an ideology that everyone can interpret and move forward. So really, this is the tussle between science, spirituality, and what I work with.
Right, amazing. And so organically you went into the whole process, and now you've written a book so beautifully, which helps all of us to understand that process, not going through it just by reading through it,
Yeah.
And another thing, in one of the things you've talked about balance, a symmetrical balance as well as symmetrical balance. I think that's amazing what you explained again. Everybody talks about symmetrical balance, but asymmetrical balance, what you've explained, really makes a lot of difference. So what I wanted to ask you, sorry,
No,
please
go ahead.
So
I was saying
you
that
talked about the fulcrum, So how do we identify the fulcrum?
So the book
Balance.
speaks about balance, and like I said, I first go about demystifying balance, and what I try to do is explain to people that your representation of balance is equal and opposite. is symmetrical. And that idea of balance has led you down the wrong road. It's that ideology of balance that's really made you feel like balance is a miss in your life. Now, if you look at balance in its most natural form, if you look at biology, if you look at neurobiology, look at cosmology, look at everything else, balance is not symmetrical. Balance is asymmetrical. It's asymmetrical in every shape and form. If you look at probably one of the best examples of it is the golden ratio, with how plants and everything evolves from each other. Right? No part of the golden ratio is symmetrical. It's an entirely asymmetrical diagram, but it's the perfect representation of balance in every shape and form. So I tell people that balance firstly is asymmetrical. So stop looking for symmetry. The second thing is that our bigger problem is that we've been interpreting balance as static. Everyone thinks balance is a destination. One day I'm going to get there and then I have balance for the rest of my life. That's the furthest thing from the truth. Balance is asymmetrical and it will change in 1 second. People don't even realize this, that, you may have the perfect life right now and the phone call the phone could ring and you could get a phone call that your child is sick or someone's passed away or something has happened, and everything that you determined as balance is gone out of the window. Even you could wake up one day and not feel well and you realize everything that was a representation of balance is gone. But the point is that even those phone calls and even those illnesses is in its form balance, if you embrace it like fluid and dynamic. If you understand that something tipping something in another thing is your body's own way of getting balance. Now, each one of us have an optimum manner in which we function. Okay, that optimum manner is defined around what's called a fulcrum. For the listeners out there, the fulcrum is something that you balance things on. Right. So if I give you a square block of metal and ask you to balance something on it, anyone will do this with ease. If I give you a little nail and I ask you to balance something on top of it, with perhaps a little more difficulty, you'll eventually get it right. If I give you a tiny water balloon and ask you to balance something on top, right, it becomes incredibly difficult. And the only thing different in all three of these is the integrity at the central point, the fulcrum. Okay. Now, you are your own fulcrum in your life. You don't have to find it. You are the fulcrum. What you need to do is define your integrity. You need to peel away the layers that get you to understand yourself. So what are your value system like? Who is your ecosystem of supportive friends around you? What are your subconscious programs that are driving you? What is the manner in which you communicate? In the 4 verticals of body, mind, relationship, environment, which is your anchoring vertical. Why is balance important? Well, balance is important because growth only happens out of your comfort zone, which means you need to become uncomfortable to grow. Right? It's uncomfortable pain that allows you to heal and grow. It's uncomfortable working hours that allows you to earn more money. It's uncomfortable training that makes you fitter. Right? But the point is that you can only push yourself outside a comfort zone if you understand where you're anchored in another point. All right? So that's it. Like the easier representation of talking about what I'm saying is that let's assume you want to reach something that's slightly out of reach. It's just out of your reach. Now, you've got 2 ways to get it. One is you can run and jump and hopefully grab it. And that's called a leap of faith. And very few people do that, or a lot of people do that, in fact. But the point is that the risk probability is exceptionally high. The other way to get it is you get someone to hold your hand and support you, or you hold a rope and you edge closer till it gets in reach and you grab it. Right? So that is the anchoring method. The anchoring method is knowing that I'm pushing myself out of my comfort zone in one, but I'm anchored in another. Very important to understand this. And that's what the secret to balance is. But I'll tell you, I conclude the book with a very, very spiritual ideology behind balance, which I'll explain to you. You see, balance, if you look at life, on the extremities of life, your ego is exceptionally impacted. If you're the best at anything, there's an ego around being the best. I have the richest money. There's an expectation around me. Everybody wants to see me. I've got to look after everybody, how they treat me, how I look, what car I drive, how I dress. There's so much of expectation as you nudge to that side. If you're on the other extreme side where you have nothing, right, your ego is also impacted because all you do is you wake up each morning wanting to be acknowledged, wanting to be recognized, wanting to fit in, wanting someone to say something nice to you. So the entire day, your psychology and your ego is inundated by these thoughts. But when you're sitting in the middle, you're not the best, you're not the worst. You have nothing to brag about, you have nothing to complain about. You're really comfortable. And the point is that nobody will ever come to you and say, you know what, I'm comfortably sitting in the 50th percentile, because there's really nothing to say. You are there, you are there. And when you're in the middle, your ego is not impacted. You don't have the stress of being the best. There's nothing to brag about. You don't have the stress of being the worst. There's nothing to complain about. When the ego is minimal, you give yourself a chance to truly rise above and discover who you are. You see, the purpose of life is knowing who am I. And most people can't even answer this question. If I ask you who you are, without your name, without your surname, without your bank balance, without who your husband is or your girlfriend or your wife is, without which city you live in, no one can tell you who they are. You understand? We've been so distracted by the identities that we've pulled in to describe who we are that most people really and truly don't know who they are. In the middle, right, there's nothing to be distracted about. Your identity doesn't matter. Your money doesn't matter. Who you're married to, which city you live in, what car you drive, doesn't matter, because you're sitting in the average percentile. There's nothing to brag about there. When there's nothing to brag about, you then have a beautiful opportunity to peel away the layers to know who you are.
Wow. It's so deep and profound. It's like sinking in, It's amazing. So you have traveled far and wide, and I think you've read a lot of scriptures and met a lot of spiritual gurus. And last when I spoke to you, you said you have found your anchorage in Lord Krishna, right?
Yes.
So my thing is, what is it that attracts you towards Lord Krishna?
Well, I grew up in a very spiritual family, isn't it? My family are more than 125 years of in the Vaishnava lineage. We are in the lineage of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so we're always looking at servicing. I spent time in an ashram. My home in South Africa is like a temple. My grandfather was a preacher. He was my first guru. So it's just such a part and parcel of who I am. And, I see myself in service. I grew up like that. From the time I've grown up, in my house, I don't think a single meal is served that's not served to Krishna. Nothing is like that. Every person is welcome, because we think of ourselves in service to everyone else. And this is really my main philosophy. So if someone asks me, what are you doing? I'm like, I always see myself in service to others. And through that, I'm extremely grateful for when someone asks me a question or someone asks me to do something. I'm eternally grateful for that, because I know that is a mercy, to be able to perform something, a good pious or good karma deed is actually a benediction from the Lord, meaning that someone needed to deserve it, needed help for you to be able to help them. If no one needs help, how would you help anybody? So nothing is... I come from that ideology of service, and I'm quite fortunate enough to be surrounded by a lot of spiritual masters. I'm in deep association with a lot of them. My spiritual master is His Holiness Bhakti Charuswami, but Radhanath Swami from ISKCON, Gaur Gopal Das, who you probably guys would know of, Gauranga Das. These are people I spent a lot of time with. I've interacted a lot with Shri Ravi Shankar, Muji, all of these guys, and I spend a lot of time traveling up in the mountains. I spend a lot of time, almost 6-7 years now. Every year I spend almost a month to 6 weeks in Kyoto at various Zen monasteries studying Buddhism. So for me, it's just about peeling away these layers of various scripts and various spiritualities.
So I think it was about, I read it somewhere, 14 years of research has gone into this book, right? And it took you a year or 14 months, I think, to write the book also.
It took me 14 months to write, but it's got anecdotes that go back about 25 years, yeah.
Wow. So how did the transformation to writing a book happen?
Well, it wasn't really a transformation. I wanted to put my thoughts down together. This isn't my first book. I've written 3 more, but this is the first publication in India. Okay. And really, I was saying no for a prolonged period of time, because my publisher who approached me was really the first publisher who gave me the freedom to write the way I wanted to and to write what I wanted to. Most other publishers came to me with a concept already and said, can you write a book about this? And I wasn't quite comfortable with that, because each concept that they presented really presented my ideology in a tiny sliver of it. So they say, can you write a book about training? Can you write a book about meditation? Can you write a book about that? And I was saying, I can write a book about all of those, but the first piece of work that goes out there really needs to encapsulate the entire ideology before we then peel away the layers. And nobody wanted that in some shape and form, So I'm eternally grateful to Pan Macmillan, because they were the first people who said, you know what, okay, we trust you. You write a book, and we won't even, and full credit to them. They gave me an editor, but they never sent me a single email or a single message for almost a year. They just allowed me to work and work and work. And when it was ready, I sent it there. And I mean, it's a big risk, isn't it? Because publishers have deadlines. They want to make sure that books are getting out. They want to make sure that authors are not on holiday and that work is happening. But full credit to them. They trusted me. They gave me that leeway to work. And the result of it is Breed, Behave, Live, Balance.
It's an amazing book. If anybody who's not read it, I think is going to miss out on it. So we definitely going to be encouraging all our viewers to definitely go through it. So
thank you very much.
No, it's amazing. It's completely a fantastic book. There is no doubt about it. And I thank Macmillan for actually allowing you to put your thought process into it. So it's a fantastic book. And so I want to come to breathing, right? You've written breathing as one of the most important things also. And I feel that a lot of our emotional turmoils, which we are going through because of the COVID and, being coped up where we are, how do we control that by breathing?
Pooja, you mentioned so much, so let's break it down a little bit, right? Because I think this is such an important subject. So many people are going through so much right now. So let's spend a few minutes on this. Whatever we're going through right now is really beyond our control. Nobody can really tell you with certain this is what's going to happen at this point of time. Okay. Now, when there's uncertainty, there's fear, right? And even Jadu Krishnamurti speaks beautifully about it. Fear is actually the emotion linked to the unknown. And as soon as the unknown becomes a little clear, the fear will disseminate, right? So whether it's in business, whether it's in life, whether it's your child going to college, whatever it is, that anxiety and that fear is always linked to the unknown, right? Now, because we don't know what's happening, that fear is driving. Now, what is fear doing in the body? Right? Fear in the body is really a hormone. It's secreting a few other hormones. Your adrenaline's going up, your cortisol's going up, your norepinephrine, epinephrine, all these hormones that stress, the flight and fight hormones are being secreted. When these secrete in your body, okay, there's a part in your brain called an amygdala. That amygdala stimulates what's called a parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, now the amygdala is a part of the brain that's looking for threats. Its job is that. That's all it does. It looks for threats, right? Now, when it's looking for threats, when that amygdala is working, it's impossible for you to make a rational decision. It's impossible. Okay, so for you to make any good judgment at this time, you have to get another part of your brain working, which is called the prefrontal cortex, which is there, right? Now, the only way to switch off that amygdala and to switch on the prefrontal cortex is with your breath. You're just breathing long exhalations. You exhale for a long period of time, you'll stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, which gets the prefrontal cortex working, right? And that's really the only thing you need to do. When you start breathing, right, and you do long exhalation, so I recommend a 4-second inhalation, and I recommend an 8-second exhalation. And when you start doing this, right, you'll notice that in 2 to 3 minutes, your entire neurobiology shifts. There's no more cortisol, there's no more adrenaline. You have this overwhelming sense of calm, and now your rational part of your brain can start to work. Now, without you becoming aware of this, and without you actually bringing a breathwork practice into your life, you are now at the mercy of the news that everybody gives you. Right, your mercy of the news that you see on Instagram and on social media and on Twitter and whatever, right? And because of artificial intelligence, it's reiterating a thought process that's going on over and over, which means that there's more hormones being secreted in your body. Now, I have a lot of times, I'm saying, a lot of people out there right now are hoping for dreams. They're hoping to attract a new partner into their life. They're hoping for wealth. They're hoping for a sense of comfort. The problem is that you're reading news that is instilling fear. The fear is secreting a hormone called cortisol, which is tensing the body. When the body gets tense, there's an aspect of the brain called the amygdala that's only looking for threats, right? So you're only seeing a threat in everything, which means that consuming all of this news right now is honestly and truly sabotaging any chance you have of attracting that which you want. Okay, this is the scary thing which people don't realize. And all you need to do is just take 5 minutes off 2 or 3 times in the day. Just practice this breath work that really centers the body. Once it centers the body, okay, everything else can disappear. It's like a massage for the brain. It's like a massage for your lymph drainage system that just gets everything out. And once you get everything out, you can operate with a lot more vitality, with a lot more clarity of thought and perspective. And then you know that if you want something, you're really giving yourself the best opportunity to go and get that.
So I think one thing good that COVID has actually done has made people go more towards meditation, because people have more time now. So a lot of them have actually turned towards meditation. So that's one good thing we have.
Yes. You're seeing a lot more people actually focused on and so this is really something really interesting. You're right. We are interested in meditation. A lot of people are also spending more time with their family. And one of the biggest misconceptions we have in life is that we attribute the quality of something to the duration of something, right? So if you know someone for 20 years, you call them my very good friend, right? Even though you know nothing about them and they know nothing about you, because you know them for 20 years, you're assuming they're your good friend. So the biggest misconception you have is you are equating duration of time spent to the quality of that relationship. And that is something that we need to really reset as well. So a lot of people are happy about, okay, I'm spending more time with our family. You're spending more time with your family because you're probably locked in with them, right? That's why the duration has gone in. Ask yourself, pause for 1 second and say, listen, in these 8 months or 6 months that we've been locked down, how well have I really learned about this person? How many layers have I peeled? How many times have you actually sat without an agenda and had a conversation to just understand the other person or listen? No one's done that at all. So yes, at front and center, COVID's brought the importance of a relationship. The problem is we're so distracted by all of these multi-sensory things moving around us that we've not been able to interpret the true metric for whether these relationships matter or not. In the book, I speak really beautifully about, there's a scientist called Robin Dunbar who says that the human brain can only sustain 5 deep emotional relationships. That's it, 5 deep emotional relationships. And the variables by which we measure that is positivity, consistency, and vulnerability. Right. So I ask people, right, can you name the 5 most important people in your life who you are positive, consistent, and vulnerable with? And everyone is like, I have 10.
I went through that exercise of yours, and the next page when I turned, it was written, remove family members. And then you turn back and you're like, okay, who are you left with?
Exactly. Now, family, you don't have a choice. They're there. You understand? Now, I'm looking at relationships you are trying to choose, right? Because even family, you can't do anything. You're operating in a default mode in there. So when I ask people, make a choice, right? They can't even make a choice. They don't even want to make a choice. I'm saying, right? You owe it to yourself, right? To name the 5 people you want to spend the most time with outside your family. And if that 5 is only 2, you owe it to yourself to put their names down there, because you're doing a grave disservice to them and to everybody else by calling everyone friends. I said, if you don't even have the courage to write down the names of the 2 most important people, how on earth are you expected to cultivate a deep, healthy relationship with them? We're now going through that epidemic called COVID, but the largest epidemic the planet has ever seen was not the Spanish flu. It's called loneliness. 70% of this population, of the global population, are suffering from loneliness. And loneliness is an inability to have just one deep emotional connection. Can you believe that? We are devoid of one deep emotional connection, that our behavior patterns have triggered the largest epidemic the planet has ever seen.
Especially today, I think with the social media, and especially with the kids, half the time they're actually just on their internet and they are on Facebook. They have so many friends, but like you rightly said, one true friend. And that's what, in fact, one of my questions to you was, how do we help these kids now? Because kids are so much on FaceTime, on on social media, Facebook, Twitter. It's become such a virtual world for them.
Yeah, the only way to help a child right now is understand what a child needs. What does a child need? What is a child's biggest problem? And I'm not talking about a 10-year-old. Perhaps some degree at 10, but let's look at from the time they're teenagers, 14, 15, going right up until maybe 25, even 30 in some stages. What is it that they want? They are struggling for the first battle in life, which is the battle of an identity. A child who's 15 years in high school up until the end of college only is battling two things. He's not battling the studies. He's either battling to fit in or to stand out. That's it. He either wants to fit into a social group, and within that social group, he wants to be awesome enough to stand out. That's it. Right? Fit in, stand out is every single child's battle on the planet. A parent needs to understand this. You need to understand, how do you bring clarity to the skill sets and the qualities that would allow them to stand out, and the skill sets and the qualities that will allow them to fit in. Right? A parent is not doing anything to help address these two fundamental problems. Right? And how are you expected to help a child if you're not addressing the key problem? It's like I can't go and help a farmer currently. It's struggling to put food on his table. You think me going and helping him identify his core values is going to make any difference to his life? No. His fundamental problem is food on the table, roof over his head. The fundamental problem of a child is, how do I fit in and how do I stand out? We are trying to address every other problem before going to the root cause of it. You address the root cause, everything else will disappear.
Right. Amazing. Such a small, simple little thing, Just fit in and fit out. That's it.
That's it.
But
That's it.
Yeah. So another thing is, today everybody talks about manifestation, believe in what you can and, manifest it, it will come to you. And, but, there's this, I was reading and you said that, you need to believe in it. It's not only the fact that you manifest it, but you need to believe the fact that you deserve it. So a lot of us have low self-esteem. A lot of us are born with that, maybe because of inner child and, a lot of other reasons, the self-worthiness is not there. So how do you, overcome that to believe in yourself?
So, everybody needs, you have to believe. When I say you got to believe that you deserve it, because if you don't believe that you deserve it, then what's happening is your behavior is sabotaging your manifestation. That's the first thing. The second thing is, everybody really needs one person in their life who can be some support and believes in them. Otherwise it's a very difficult battle, to be honest. So what's important is to identify who that person is and cultivate that deep relationship. For people like us in our families, one of the parents or that ecosystem is there. There's no shortage of people who believe in them. Now we need to cultivate that belief in themselves. And self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence, all of this is very cyclic. See, the secret is to trick the human brain. And the way to trick it is to bring more successes into its forefront. Which means when you're setting goals, don't set exceptionally high goals that are very, very difficult to achieve. Because then what's happening, the brain is getting that feeling of discontentment because it's always failing. Right? So you set goals that are not super easy, that require a little bit of work, but things that you can achieve on a day-to-day basis. The other thing you need to do is you need to hack your neurobiology by bringing it into the front of your awareness. So every time you've done something amazing, keep a chart. Like if you're saying, I need to exercise every single day. Keep a chart, and every single day that you exercise, put an X on it. Right? So it's in the front. Your success is in the front of your mind all the time. See, as type A personalities, we don't give ourselves enough time to reward ourselves for success. We're constantly pushing and persevering and persevering. So, and that's a childhood schema as well. A childhood schema called perfectionism will constantly drive you to improve and improve without really bringing any sense of balance into your mind. And the only way to rewrite this is through the conscious mind, by bringing your awareness to it. And the more you bring your awareness to it, the better chance you got of actually hacking this from a neurobiological and a psychological standpoint.
So, you said success. In today's world, a lot of people are relating success with material good, material happiness, I have a Mercedes, I have a BMW. That's the success, and that's how they are relating success to.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of people are doing that. And each person's definition of success is completely different, and it's important for them to define it. What's also important is to understand how are you stacking yourself up for success with your existing variables. The definitions around things is really the problem with everything. Like I keep saying, the fundamental problem in relationships is called vagueness, right? It's because people are so vague about what they want, that vagueness is translating into vague expression of what they want. And vague expression of what they want is now resulting in them not getting anything, right? So if you have clarity about what you want, then Alfred Adler, the psychologist, said your cognitive and your physiological functions will align to help you get it, right? So it's the exact same thing with your goal setting, the exact same thing with your purpose, isn't it? The more clarity you have with that, the more likely you are to go and get what exactly you want to. And being vague and having that lack of clarity is probably one of your biggest stumbling blocks in achieving whatever you want to, whether it's success, whether it's a healthy relationship, whether it's this. You got to really define it and break it down into actionables. Once you do that, once you have clarity about the process, your mind will kick in and you'll automatically execute.
Nice. So I have a question from one of our readers. To forgive ourselves and others is the best practice, but at times the pressure to forgive is suffocating. How do we heal ourselves?
So forgiveness is interesting. I had this topic the other day. I was talking to someone. The struggle to forgive is linked to fear. Okay, you are scared to forgive because you're scared that whoever's done what to you will do it again. Okay, and you have to realize that. Firstly, you've heard this Buddhist quote tons of time, that your inability to forgive you is really impacting your physiology more than it's hurting the other person. The Buddhists say it's like holding a hot coal, waiting to throw it at someone, forgetting that you are getting burnt in the same process. Now, let's leave that aside. I'm telling you, your inability to forgive is linked to your fear of that incident repeating itself. Okay, why are you scared of that incident repeating itself? Is because your mental state is one of victim mentality. Victim mentality is you are thinking that the world has done something to me and I'm just a victim. And you're enjoying that victim state because that victim state is rendering you innocent, right? But your innocence is also rendering you powerless. So the fear is being driven by the fact that something happened to me and I can't change the outcome. Now, all you need to do is, before you forgive someone or in the process of forgiving someone, you need to sit back and ask yourself simply, what are 2 things I could have done differently to prevent this outcome? Right? Ask yourself, what are 2 things I could have done differently to prevent this outcome? By merely asking this question, by merely jotting down and realizing that I had 2 things within my power that could have changed this outcome, you now switch your mental state from victim mentality to player mentality. Player mentality is a term that I use from the world of sports, where I say that only a player on the field can impact the outcome of the game. You can't impact the outcome of the game from sitting on the bench. So when I say player mentality, I'm saying see yourself as a vital player in your own life, being able to affect its outcome. So that's that mental state. When you switch from that mental state, you will never, ever fear forgiving anybody, because you'll realize that the outcome is not in their hands. The outcome was in my hands, irrespective of what they did. I always had a choice in a behavior pattern that I could have done, that could have prevented this. And anything, you see, accountability and responsibility are 2 of the fundamental principles every human needs to cultivate. If you do not accept accountability and responsibility for the actions and what is happening to you, then you are in victim state. If you're in victim state, you're always going to be seeing yourself as being manipulated by external variables. And then you're really not living a life. You're just existing from day to day at the mercy of everyone else. And that's a life without hope. I wouldn't wish that upon anyone. But when you cultivate this process of really asking yourself, what can I do? And even if you realize that, as difficult as it is, I'm not saying that things are not difficult. Some of the choices that you have to make will be incredibly difficult, but it's still a choice you have. It's still an action you can do. No one's saying it's going to be easy. It will be extremely difficult. But even though it's difficult, you are still not powerless. You have the power to impact everything in your life. And this is why people are scared to forgive. They're scared to forgive because they're still in that victim mode. Okay, and that victim mode is good. And until they don't switch that mindset, forgiveness will never become a part and parcel of who they are. And the beauty is that when you learn to forgive, you learn to become fearless in how you live your life. You will love fearlessly, you will give fearlessly, you will speak fearlessly, you will think fearlessly, you will operate out of pure fearlessness because you don't fear the outcome and you realize that the outcome is still within your power.
Well, I must tell the readers that, all these thoughts which he has actually right now said, they're all there in the book, and it's amazing. I think it's not even like a book, it's like a workbook. So you have to go through it, you have to write it, you need to, and he tells you the process, how to actually evaluate everything, and the book is unbelievable. You have to go through it. It's a workbook, it's not a book. It's just completely a workbook, and it'll change your life. If you sit down and you read it and you write down your thoughts, what he's asked you to do, it's a fantastic book. So my last question, if I can ask you, is, emotional toxicity. Nowadays you read that it leads to diseases and stuff like that, right? So how do we get rid of that?
You get rid of it by speaking. You get rid of it by two steps. The first step is drawing your awareness to the emotion you're feeling. The second step is by expressing the emotion you're feeling, and start by expressing subtly, But emotional toxicity can only be circumnavigated through expression. And you're right, emotional toxicity is leading to disease because there are different types of bodies. There's a physical body, there's your aura body, there's your mental body, there's your spiritual body. Okay, and when a disease manifests on your physical body, it's bypassed all of these layers to get to it, which means that by the time you get sick, you've already had a toxic thought in your mind for a minimum of 6 months before that. It's already penetrated your mental body and your aura body. You understand? So emotional toxicity is the process of really getting rid of everything. Chanting is the process of emotionally detoxifying on that level. Thinking gratitude is a way of emotionally detoxifying on the mental level. You can constantly, and spending time with really spiritually advanced people or spiritually enlightened people is a way of cleaning up that cosmic energy of yours. But you have to understand that everything that happens on your body has been cut across every other body of yours. You are not just this body that we are seeing. You are a byproduct of different bodies that you cannot see altogether, and they all are being impacted as well. And when something manifests in the body, it's been that bad that it's really penetrated multiple layers before it's got to you. And emotional toxicity is drawing your awareness to whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling, and getting rid of it in the same time. And it's really very liberating. The problem is that nobody wants to talk immediately because there's no short-term gratification from saying what is true and what is honest. That's the problem. The fundamental problem is everybody wants short-term instant gratification. So it's more gratifying to lie than it is to be honest about how you feel. Though the long-term gratification and the long-term peace is there. So you need to hardwire your mind and make a decision that, do I want short-term instant gratification through lying, or am I going to be emotionally detoxify and be honest and know that this is going to lead to long-term tranquility and peace?
Wow. I think one of the biggest and the most difficult things you said is to forgive, and that also leads, like you rightly said, to emotional toxicity. And
Yep.
the method you said, like I am telling you, you have to read his book. He's actually listed all these things, changing your environment, meeting people with higher frequencies, your way of breathing, everything changes that. So I, I would really, and I think I love the way you have even listed out the chapters. It starts internally with self-love, and then it goes on to external thing, and then it goes on last to self-realization. It's amazing how you even thought that singular thing out. It's just fantastic.
Yeah,
So
and it's balanced through your chakras. Each is a representation of the 8 chakras. 7 in the body,
oh
the eighth one
wow,
sitting above you. So the 8th
okay,
chakra is above
right.
your crown chakra. So above your crown chakra is self transcendence. So you transcend above your own self. Yeah.
Amazing. I didn't realize that. Right now, when you spoke about it, I seen how it goes. It's each chapter is like a chakra chapter, when you're talking about
Correct.
it.
Yeah.
Wow. So, thank you so much, Shamal, on behalf of Ahmedabad Book Club and Karma
Thank you very
Foundation.
much.
And, I would really like to thank you for sharing your wonderful insights for the session, as well as sparing your valuable time with us. And I would also like to really request the audience, please, please, please go out, buy his book. It's going to really change your life. Do the exercises which is there, follow it. Even if you follow 1/4 of it, trust me, I can take a guarantee that your life is about to change, because there are so many takeaways, and I have noted it down. I sat down with a pencil and a piece of paper when I was reading your book, and I have actually sat down and noted points which I want to change in my life. And there's so many things which kind of made sense to me. On a personal note, I can tell you that there's so many changes which I'm about to do, and that's thanks to you. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank
And
you.
I would really, really tell you, please go out and buy the book. It's something
Yes.
you have to do it.
Buy it in
And
triplicate and give it
yeah,
away. Give it to as many
as a
people as
gift,
you
I
can.
think it's one of the best gifts you can give it.
Yeah,
So
that's it.
thank you so
And
much for listening to us, and thank you so much for sharing, for actually writing this book and sharing your valuable insights with us. And I think he's just touched the tip of the iceberg. You have to read the book to understand what it is all about.
absolutely. Thank you very, very much for having me. I'm glad
Thank
that you
you.
liked it. And to
It is
everyone, thank you very
amazing.
much.
Thank you.
Sorry.